Today we're going to be talking about both climate change and air pollution. Please don't switch off. I have a guilty admission that these days when I hear about these things on the news, I often switch off because I don't feel I can take all that information. Today we are not here to burden you with stories of doom and gloom. We are here to bring you some glimmers of hope. Yes, the situation is bad and action needs to be taken quicker by those people in positions of authority. We are going to do a quick dive into climate change and air pollution, how that relates to Bradford, what is currently happening in Bradford to tackle some of these issues. Today we have two very informed guests to answer some questions for us. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So please can you tell us your names and your role in tackling the issues?
Yeah, thanks. My name's Nick Hodgkinson and I'm from the campaign group called Fossil Free West Yorkshire. As the name suggests, we want West Yorkshire, but particularly the pension fund for West Yorkshire, to stop funding fossil fuel producing companies. And when I say fossil fuel, I mean the stuff we burn, like petrol, gas, coal, oil.
Hi, I'm Sally Jones. I work for Bradford Council. I work in a team called the Sustainability Service, and in there we deal with both local air quality and all the duties that the council has to report back on that and do things about it for the government. And we also work to deal with tackle climate change, help us to get to net zero. We've got a target of getting there by 2038 in Bradford, and general sustainability work, biodiversity, those kind of things as well in that team.
And I'm Cathy. I work for Born in Bradford, which is a health research organisation. And I have been working on air pollution and healthy urban places within Born in Bradford. So I'm going to start, Nick, with a question to you. Can you tell us as briefly as you can, what is climate change or the climate crisis?
Okay. Well, when we burn oil, gas, petrol, coal, what we do is release greenhouse gases into the air. And those gases, they make the atmosphere hotter. So the more we burn fossil fuels like oil and gas, the more we heat up the atmosphere. And the effect is like wrapping a blanket around the world. So instead of letting the heat drift out into outer space, we trap the heat in the atmosphere and that heats up the world. So the more we burn fossil fuels, the more we heat up the world. And actually, the world is hotter now. The average temperature anyway is hotter now than it's ever been since human beings first started to grow food. And that's a problem because the heat messes with the weather so terrible. So it causes extreme weather to happen. And when I say extreme, I mean floods, storms, heat waves, long periods without water, and wildfires, the sort of things that we have been seeing on telly. So these are really bad news because obviously if that happens, farmers' crops get destroyed, people's homes get destroyed, and actually people die. So it's disastrous for the people who are directly affected, but it affects all of us as well. Like, for instance, we buy, or import rather, a lot of our food from other countries. So if the crops don't grow there, then food prices go up here. So we're all affected by this, even though people in the richer world are probably not as affected as people in the poorer parts of the world at the moment. But I guarantee you, if we don't change our ways, that is going to change. We all need to take it seriously.
Thinking about the weather in Britain over my lifetime, I feel that it's changed quite a bit. There's been a lot of floods, so like in Hebden Bridge, which isn't in Bradford itself, but it's nearby. You often hear of Hebden Bridge flooding. There's been the gales that happened at the bank holiday weekend that were very, very strong and blew over my tent, I have to say. And there's been a horrific incident where in the East Yorkshire, there was a landslide and a young girl died in it. These are events that I think are usual in Britain. Would you say that those could be caused by climate change?
it's really hard to say whether any individual event is caused by climate change. But what we know for absolute certain is that the warmer the climate gets, the more we can expect extreme weather like flooding, like storms, like heat waves. The more we get to mess with the climate by burning fossil fuels, the more that's going to happen. And you can see really strong evidence of it in other parts of the world. So like this summer, there's been a huge amount of flooding in Bangladesh and in Pakistan. About 3 million people were made homeless in Bangladesh and over 200 people drowned in Pakistan. So it is happening. It's really happening, and it's happening now. But like you said, it's not to be doom and doom. You know, there are good things happening as well. So we can make clean and cheap electricity from the wind and from the sun and from the waves around the country. So, you know, we can do things. We just, like said, need to do it a lot quicker and put a lot more money into it to make that change away from burning dirty old fossil fuels to using nice, clean, safe electricity. That's what we have to do.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Sally, could you give us a brief explanation of what air pollution is?
Basically, anything that shouldn't be in our lovely clean air that we wouldn't expect to be there. And usually, so there's natural sources like volcanoes, wildfires, but also a lot of the issue that we've got is that man-made pollution. When we burn stuff, the same issues Nick was talking about, we create pollution, and it tends to be more of a problem where we've got more population density. So the areas that we live in. So out in the countryside, it's not the same kind of issue as it is in a city centre. But it feels like the whole issue is a very similar one to what we dealt with back in the 50s. The Clean Air Act was brought in because of the huge health issues that air pollution causes and the smogs and, you know, all the issues then. We still have those going on today, those health issues. But at that time, the government decided, right, we need to do something about this. This is untenable. It was really visual. You couldn't walk 3 yards because of the pollution. And it made people take action. And what they did was completely change the way that we heat our homes. The grants were given out to move everybody to gas, another fossil fuel, but a cleaner one. And it just feels that we need the same kind of transition and focus now to deal with climate change. But the difficulty is that it's not as visible and obvious. And like Nick said, you wouldn't always attribute the problems that you're having to that cause. So there might be water shortages and this causes a war and lots of people are injured because of a war, and it's not directly connected back to the problem of all the fossil fuel use that's going on. So it becomes a little bit tenuous and more difficult to take action. And that's just one of the things that I find really interesting about this whole issue. It's the same problems, the same burning and the same combustion for air pollution and climate change that we need to deal with.
Health. Like you say, it's really hard to be able to know what the impacts of air pollution are because it is invisible. In terms of our health, what kind of thing is happening in our bodies if we're breathing in air that is badly polluted?
So when you're breathing in air that's not clean, you are taking in some really small particles and gases that interfere with the way our body works. So you might think it might just give you a cough or a sore throat, but actually these particles are so very small, they're not only causing the inflammation in your lungs and your respiratory system, but they pass through the lining of the lungs into your circulatory system as well. So these particles that shouldn't be there are then in your bloodstream, and they've found literally, carbon deposits in the brains of children and in the telomeres, the DNA of kids. It's really affecting our body. So as new research comes out every day on the health impacts of air pollution, and they're really causing us some huge problems. And we do know that when we actually clean up the air, we get to see health improvements as well. So we need to do with climate change everywhere. But there are some places where pollution is concentrated, where there's lots of people at the moment. If we could deal with it in those places, it would help both climate change and air pollution and health all at the same time.
And the thing about climate change and health is it's like you say, it's harder to spot. But
Yeah.
you think about the real fundamentals of what makes for good human health. You need somewhere safe to live. You need decent food. You need access to water. And all of those three things are being put seriously at risk because of the extreme weather that's caused by climate change.
I think the other thing as well is the other big similarity is that the impacts of this are being felt so much more by vulnerable and deprived people to both climate change and air quality. And they're now sort of seeing that actually a heat wave, if you're in a high rise with no access to green space and you've got 4 people in a room and you're unable to cool down, that's so much more dangerous than if you're out in the countryside in a villa with access to a pool and air conditioning. It's just a completely different experience. Similarly, air pollution, we know that the worst, sort of most polluted places are where the poor people live. And it's this disparity and unfairness of all these things as well, and the way it impacts our most vulnerable people that are least able to cope with it.
Yeah, it's that injustice that kind of keeps me angry. And you've got a bit of anger to keep campaigning. You've got to keep feeling, why am I doing this? Because this is just so unfair. This is wrong. As well as being dangerous for me and our children and their children, but it's really bad for people right now and people who've done the least to cause the problem.
Yeah.
Nick, you were talking about the campaign that you're involved in as being involved with West Yorkshire Pensions. Is that right? West Yorkshire Pension Fund.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what is the West Yorkshire Pension Fund? Who does it cover? Who does it apply to?
Well, West Yorkshire Pension Fund certainly covers all of the employees of the 5 councils in West Yorkshire. But there's also people who work in other councils in other parts of the country and people who work in schools and all sorts of other institutions around the area. So they look after the pension investments for all of those people. And it's a big one. It's about 20 billion, I think, 20 billion pounds. So what my campaign, or to say our campaign, is trying to do is to persuade the West Yorkshire Pension Fund not to invest in companies that produce fossil fuels like oil, coal and gas. Because the one thing that scientists around the world are completely clear about is that we do not need any more fossil fuels. We need to keep them in the ground if we're serious about preventing the worst effects of climate change.
So if you're disinvesting in the fossil fuels, what happens to all the jobs of people who are involved in that sector? And then the sectors that use those fossil fuels, so car manufacturing, we see a lot of car, what do you call them, showrooms, car garages along Canal Road in Bradford. What would happen to all the people who work in those industries?
It's really important that the government and the business leaders of those industries start to make proper plans about how we're going to help people move from this type of industry with these type of skills to a new industry that requires probably quite a lot of the same skills, but also needs some different skills. Now, I know someone who used to be a gas boiler engineer, and he decided to retrain to become a heat pump engineer, and a heat pump is for renewable energy. Let's invest in it, and let's get business and government and trade unions to work together to make sure that people don't get left behind this time.
Sally, with air pollution, so you're working in Bradford specifically. What do you think, or could you tell us what Bradford is doing to address air pollution?
Yeah, so one of the main things that Bradford's done that people will be aware of in recent years is brought in a clean air zone. So that acknowledges that a lot of the issues that we've got in this centre and within the inner ring road are vehicles. So where the places where the really high levels are next to roads. So what we've done is control which types of vehicles can come into the city, and what that means is that the older commercial vehicles that aren't up to the right standard and don't meet our zone standards, they can pay to come into the zone, but the charge is such that it discourages them coming in. And what that's done is really reduce the amount of older, dirtier vehicles on the roads, and we're seeing huge reductions in pollution, which is a great sign. But alongside that, we've also then the zone, because some people do choose to pay to come in, it creates a revenue stream that we are then able to reinvest then in sustainable transport in the city. And the kind of things we've started doing are a clean air schools programme. giving out grants to schools, and schools are paying for bike shelters and new green areas for the kids to sit out in, and all sorts of amazing improvements. They've been great. We've also got work that we need to do on public transport. We do, and that's something that Bradford's doing with government, looking at new train stations, dealing with the bus services. The mayor's bringing in some good initiatives around bus and how we take that back into more of the public's control, so that we can all get around easily without cars at all. So there's absolutely loads of work going on to deal with air pollution in Bradford, because obviously it's not just vehicles. There is domestic burning going on, and the cost of living crisis has caused us some issues there. We need to help people and educate them about the harm that wood burning and stoves does. Again, it's like the 50s all over again. We need to talk to industry about their emissions, agriculture, and we also need to think about the emissions that are coming in from other places. Some of the pollution in the UK is actually coming from Europe, so we need to work with them and our partners over there to help reduce it as well. So there's an awful lot of work going on, and I could talk for a good hour, but I won't do, but that's the main things that we're doing at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any statistics available yet? The Clean Air Zone was started in September 2022. Do you have any statistics on health improvements in Bradford as yet? Or is that data not available yet?
The data has been shared with us. It's still out for publication and peer review. Quite rightly, it's not right for me to share that.
Well, sorry, could you explain what that means?
That means that it's being looked at by lots of clever people, cleverer than I. Having seen it, though, I was dancing a jig to see that the work that we're doing is bringing in improvements in health in Bradford, because that's all I've ever wanted to do in my working life. So it was a great day for me to see that data. I'm really looking forward to being able to share it with you.
For the people who are very vulnerable, what can they do to reduce
themselves?
Exposure, reduce breathing in that?
Okay, so one of the things that you might do is, if you live on a busy road, you may choose to open the windows at the back of your property to ventilate it. Ventilation is always a good idea, because generally the air will always be cleaner outside than in. In our homes, we have cookers going, there's dust, there's all sorts of reasons to get clean air into the property. A good idea, it's not a good idea to be burning candles. It's not a good idea when you're cooking, you must ventilate. All those kind of things help us. Keeping an eye on the forecast outside, and there is a pollution forecast that government do alongside the weather forecast, is a really good idea, because if you are vulnerable, it's good to know that it's going to be high on a particular day and take your medications with you. You might do simple things like, if you're planning a walk to a place, take the route that takes you through the park rather than along the side of the 6-lane highway. That's a good way to reduce your exposure. And how you choose to get there is important as well, because if you were to walk rather than go in a vehicle, you're then reducing everybody else's exposure as well as your own. So, and don't burn solid fuel in your home if you can avoid it.
We want to try and reduce the amount of damage we do to the climate. The more people can use public transport, you can fit 50 people on a bus instead of max 4 or 5 in a car. So, that's one vehicle travelling along with a load of people in it. And increasingly, buses are electric. So they're not actually producing hardly any emissions, except for when they're built. They don't pump anything out the exhaust because they're electric. So that actually not only is good for people who are suffering from air pollution, COPD and other kinds of illnesses, but it's good for all of us, because it reduces the amount of greenhouse gases that we put into the air, and that damages the climate.
Sally, I believe you've been working with Born in Bradford on doing research into how the Clean Air Zone has been working, how effective it's been. Can you tell us a little bit about the research you've been involved in?
Yes. So before the Clean Air Zone came, there was a lot of research done at Born in Bradford. With the council, I've shared data with Born in Bradford because we spend a lot of government money on monitoring, and that data really helps the team here know what's going on with air quality out there. But what their data showed was that even below the levels set by the World Health Organization, you're still seeing health impacts, and we were seeing, reduction in the weight of babies, respiratory conditions, all sorts of health conditions in Bradford. And that information was really useful. So when government said that we had to have a clean air zone, we were able to tell politicians in Bradford at the same time. And the reason why is these health impacts that we're having. So, and then we obviously put in the zone, but we've been working with Born in Bradford and Rosie McEachran and the other scientists here to look all the way through, look at what difference does it make.
And I believe part of the research, which might not have been done yet, is on the economic impact of the clean air zone as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and also checking in with communities that how it affects them. So making sure that the grants that we've got were right, going out and talking to people. And Born in Bradford have helped us do that, going to talk to some seldom heard communities and going out and finding out what their issues are with this. And also helping us communicate with those groups as well. So things like it transpired that the taxis are a really quite vulnerable group that don't have a lot of income. And we were asking them to all upgrade their vehicles and give them a grant afterwards. And that just didn't work because they didn't have the money up front. So we've changed the way we do it so that they got the money and then could go buy the car. Little things like that have helped us get to where we are. We've now got the cleanest taxi fleet in the country. 99.7% of them are compliant with our zone. They've done an amazing job, but they just needed us to get it right to help them get there. So there's been a lot of useful research gone on that's really helped this happen.
That's great. Thank you. As a final takeaway, I would like both of you to just tell us something about what you think the next steps need to be to tackle climate change and to tackle air pollution. So if we start with you first.
Okay, well, I'll pick up on what you were saying, investment up front. You have to have investment up front in new industries in order to help them get established and replace the old industries. And as I said before, you also need to have investment to help people retrain and learn skills so that they can have the right skills at the right time for the right industries. So we need that kind of serious investment. We've done it before, we've done it with other types of crisis, and I have no doubt that we can do it again. But we do need our politicians, whether that's local or national, and our business leaders, particularly big business leaders who've got a lot of investment potential at their disposal. We need all of those people to sit down together and to take seriously the fact that we are, to put it bluntly, risking the end of human civilization if we don't quickly move away from burning oil, gas and coal and start using clean electricity on a massive scale. We absolutely can do that. As a human race, we have the knowledge, we have the money, and we already have the technology. I've got some of it on my roof and solar panel, so we know how to do it.
I would say let's do that work more quickly in the places where we've got the pollution problems and help out those deprived communities and make sure we do it in a just way so that those people can get around, get to their jobs, do what they're doing without being restricted in any way. So I think we can deal with air pollution and climate change really well at the same time. We've made some moves in the past where we've got it a little bit wrong, like all moving to diesel cars or burning wood to help deal with climate change. Basically, I think Nick and I both agree we just need to stop burning stuff. And we've got all the technology to be able to do that really safely and well, and we should just be doing that.
Perfect. Stop burning stuff.
Yeah. Simple.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your input today.
Thank you.
Thank you.